Welcome to Picture Games, podcast about what's new and awesome in 3D printing for gamers. I'm one of your hosts, Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Perrin. I'm joined by
Carson Sowers, who is slightly confused by our episode title.
Huh?
Oh, my screen reads that we are a Fire Emblem stream, so that is neat. But maybe it's just a quirk. I am going to try to fix it on my end if it's from me. But if it's not, ignore
It's
me.
sure not me.
All right. Well, I'm gonna try to tweak it. But anywho, that's a fun way to start with a glitch, and that's probably a good segue. But I'll let you go first.
Oh boy. Oh boy. So this is where we ask what you've been doing in the hobby lately, Kristen. And this is one of the first times in a little while that mine and your answers are both going to be not much, because for me, I got hit with the winter snowstorm of 2024. And if you didn't know, printers don't like cold weather.
They don't.
No. So, and not only did I get cold weather, I got completely snowed in.
Mm-hmm.
And then like started losing basic services like running water.
Yikes.
And things in the house, and having to deal with this all of the time in which I have been dependent on to animal sit and take care of family members who need care.
Mm-hmm.
All of us in this one little house now that is not fully operational.
Not fully operational. That is a kind way of saying that, I suppose. It's not fully operational.
And then on the first day of this situation, in which I had accepted responsibility and custody of all of these extra responsibilities, one of those tiny extra responsibilities, the tiny fuzzy responsibility, wrapped her leash around my leg, pulled it out from under me, and sent me tumbling down a hill.
Oh no!
Spraining my leg.
Oh no! I'm feeling slightly more blessed than you are in terms of good fortune, but not much. But
it's like the lamest episode of Little House on the Prairie you've ever seen. And it's like
brutal.
And those are already terrible. Anytime you watch them.
Depending on who the cast is that's there. Yeah.
So I'm hobbling around on a sore leg, having to like water and take care of goats and chickens and animals and extra dogs and cats, and feed people and feed myself. And I'm still working every day because I didn't lose internet or electricity, so I'm still putting in full 8-hour OPR days.
Just running water, just to be clear.
Yeah, I just lost the running water.
Yeah, well,
but it got to like 0 degrees on a few days, and so I'm having to like. Oh, and by the way, my house is heated by firewood now because electricity costs around here got stupid, and so this was. So I'm having to go haul in firewood and dig it out of like 12 inches of ice to get it out.
Did you prep for it? Do you have piles of wood at least?
I do have the piles of wood.
Because I too, when I was younger, did we called it ricking. I don't know what you call it, but when you rick up a bunch of firewood, and we'd basically run it between 2 trees and just make this big row, and then we'd make another big row between others, and that's how we heated. We had a cabin in the mountain. That's how we heated it.
And then I can't get my little printers to work because it's too cold in the print room, and I can't justify heating the space when I'm trying to heat all the other spaces and keep the animals in comfortable positions.
I did hear you had a
time.
Huh? Go ahead. No, I heard you had an innovative solution to this, but keep going.
I'm not sure what the innovative solution here
I'll ask you about it. Continue. Okay. Continue.
Okay. And I'm wanting to do all sorts of hobby stuff because, like, I have hit like one of my little inspiration spells, like a manic thing, and I'm like, I need to get all this stuff done for my armies and my games. And I've got this burst of energy and no outlet for it.
No outlet because the printer is.
Yeah. So I
Uh,
had to focus, and also I can't go get supplies or crafting. So like I'm literally having to use only the materials I have on hand. I can't go to game stores to get new things. I can't go get new supplies I don't have. I'm having to use what I've got. And thankfully I'm more blessed than most. I have lots and lots and lots of hobby supplies.
yes, yes, you are
Um,
smart.
and a backlog of printed miniatures of various variety and quality to paint and keep me busy.
Hmm.
Painted some little rat boys. That was fun.
Nice.
Yep, yep. And but I didn't get to do the printing. I
Yep.
wanted to do
Yep.
printing, and I can't do printing.
Hmm.
And there's all these lovely files, and Last Sword is teasing me with all these awesome high elves coming out that I'm like, I need you. And then Artisan Guild just last month released all these awesome more high elves that I need, and I can't print none of them.
But you'll be able to
Eventually, yeah.
eventually.
So I'm having to keep busy doing other things, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in this episode.
Yep.
But
Yep.
what? You had a question first before I switch
Yes,
focus?
yes. Before we go to me, I also heard that you were talking about maybe trying to figure out a way to use computers to heat the room to print.
Oh, this is not. I wasn't going to heat the room to print, but
Ah, ah.
computers do serve. So there's a joke that gaming
But
computers are space heaters.
it could work maybe.
No, not only could it
It does.
does work.
Got it.
In fact, there's several. So here's the fun thing about that topic.
Hmm.
The joke is that a gaming computer is so efficient at its use of electricity and converting it to heat, because that's how you get more and more processing power,
Hmm.
that they are more efficient than space heaters to heat a room. So that playing Quake or turning on an electric heater, it's better to play Quake.
Hmm.
That is not quite true.
It's not quite true.
Not
Okay.
quite true. So this has been studied, and the
Hmm.
answer is that it is nearly as efficient as the most efficient of space heaters,
Mm.
because they really are that efficient at converting electricity to heat energy, as in through which gaining electronic power to do gaming stuff with.
Right.
Um,
Right. So
but they're
nearly,
not.
but you get to play
It's
the
not
game.
perfect, because you still need to turn some of that energy into ones and zeros.
But you
But it
do get to
turns
play a
out that
game.
it is more efficient than cheap heaters. So
So
if
better than
you
a crappy heater, and you get to play a game.
yes, and you get to play a game.
All right. All right. I'm
Exactly.
sold.
And in fact, there are some communities out there in Europe and in Georgia that the they have set up thermo thermal heating
Hmm.
and thermal electricity reclamation from server farms that are hosted in the area, where they take the waste heat and then use it to like become actual heat and repurpose it.
Right.
And YouTuber, if you're familiar with Linus Tech Tips,
Hmm.
Linus has very famously, since he is big computer person, used his server room in his house to heat his swimming pool.
Wow. Effectively.
I mean, the true answer is it actually mostly works in the other direction, that the swimming pool cools his computers
I
because it works
mean,
as a gigantic water reservoir.
potato tomato to me, but yes, yes, okay,
But
I get
yes,
that.
when the servers are going full blast, he manages to raise his pool 1 degree.
1 degree. Well, hey, that's still technically heating,
Yeah.
and prevents it
Mhm.
from freezing or
Mhm.
something horrible.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Thermocooling is super cool. Geothermal is a fun mechanic to play with, as far as like heating houses or cooling houses and things like that. It is a wonderful it's a wonderful product
mhm.
and technique,
Yep.
and you can then also play really awesome video games at the same time.
Hmm. Hmm. Speaking of which, Do you want to ask what I've been
Oh,
doing?
I think it's the same thing I've been doing.
To a degree,
Mhm.
but not
Uh-huh.
just what you've been doing,
Okay.
because we had this beautiful episode a couple weeks ago
Mhm.
where we outlined our lofty dreams for the future of our 3D printing year.
Yes, yes, yes,
And
yes.
then, and
Uh-huh.
then ADHD brain go burr.
Oh
um,
dear.
yeah. So
Mhm.
got really into some MMOs again. First time in a little
Uh-huh.
while. I've been on that horse.
Yeah, you dragged me into it
Yeah,
too. We've
yeah,
both been playing Final Fantasy 14 like a madman. It made me
it's
revisit
true.
my Final Fantasy army.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
and that did have some intriguing synergies for me, right? Right.
mhm.
And if you don't know this about me, my first love with Final Fantasy is summoners.
Oh.
And I love pet classes in D and
Yeah.
D.
Mhm.
I love Beastmaster type classes in
Mhm.
wargaming.
Right.
And not probably surprising, have tangentially always kept a little eye for that Pokemon game.
Oh, and recently I've been on the Pokemon binge too, like
And I
competitive breeding and all that jazz.
Yeah, and I just recently picked up Violet and have been
Mhm.
kind of playing around with that. And so been getting kind of into that space again, and then came out a different game.
Yeah, Power World. I've been keeping an eye on that, and I've been talking about that to my friends about, hey, this game's coming out. It's going to be really awesome. Seems like most of the world agrees with me. This game has sold like 5 million copies in 3 freaking days.
But is it?
Huh?
Well, see, okay, so you were kind enough to get me into a server, and
Yeah.
I
I
then
got
have a
game codes for like
Mhm,
most of our guild to come join
yep,
and play
yep.
with us.
So we had a bunch of our free company people, and there's the
Mhm.
social aspect is very good. But then I locked in probably one of the worst episodes of hyperfixation I have ever locked in, and I don't
I
remember.
did notice y'all was playing that game a
I
lot.
I don't really remember most of the last 3 days.
Oh dear.
Anywho, this led to the fact that it's an experimental early release game, and that means problems. And one of our
Mhm.
first problems was, of course, we had to reset our server and delete everything and start over.
Yeah, so there's a problem in the game right now that they warn you about when you launch the game that the dedicated servers are unstable and you could experience character deletion. And unfortunately, our server that happened yesterday. It crashed like a whole bunch of times in a row. And then all of our character saves got corrupted, so we had to restart the characters.
Yeah, and so we did that. And of course, if you know me, you probably don't necessarily know this about me. But when there's a setback, when I don't know, lose 20 levels suddenly without warning in a game, I get big mad.
Yeah,
And
it's disheartening. I could understand not wanting to play the game anymore.
right. But our free company rallied. We got together. Everybody was super positive. I'd never seen such a group of resilient,
Mhm.
upbeat, positive folks. Can't tell you if you're interested in Final Fantasy, you should check them out. You can either check out my Discord or we can get to the information. Just message one of us. We'll get it to you. Anyway,
Mhm.
great vibe, super fun, and they
Mhm.
like put me back up. I got excited, excited. But what's the other aspect about this game that I didn't understand fully? Ferrum, do you remember?
Oh, it's a base defense game.
It's a base defense game. So when we
Right.
are building and recreating things,
Right?
everything you build it has hit points. It's like a role
Yeah.
playing game. You can destroy it, and if you build something out of wood,
Mhm.
it can burn.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons I was like, "Hey guys, let's all join the same guild and not make this a PvP game," because part of the game is me and my buddies and my Pokemons get together with you and your buddies, and we go raid the other people's place and ruin their day.
Right. But it turns out environmental factors can just ruin your day for you.
Uh
So
huh.
after investing a massive amount of time and resources, uh, our base burned down today. And that kind of brought me to
Oh.
where I'm at because my actual block to printing this week was my brain, right? And that's
Uh
going to
huh.
happen. You're going to have those problems where you can't catalyze, but you
Right.
also might have a real disaster, right? Like our virtual fire, you might have a much more serious, much more real one. And that kind of made me want to think and talk about that with you today, if that's cool.
Hmm.
But I was there in my house watching that, and I kind of had that moment of like virtual reality where I was like seeing the fire creep from outside inside, and just kind of imagining what that would be like for my real physical space because I have
It's
so much stuff.
terrifying.
so much stuff. And I can only imagine, you know, especially if you've just got your stuff together or you have some other life circumstance, you have a physical issue, you have to go to college, whatever it is, the disruption is real and the messing up of your life is real. And having a passion for a hobby like ours with 3D printing, you're gonna have a bad time when that gets disrupted and when you have to suddenly just suffer through a period of inaccessibility for this thing that's bringing you joy. Our magic goo machines make Param and I so happy. The
Mm-hmm.
ability to just pull an entire beautiful army out of the goo and have something to paint, something to fixate on, something to get distracted by, and something that's relatively affordable after your initial investment, right?
Yeah.
But
You can hug the big dragons.
you can hug the big dragon and you know and pretend he doesn't burn virtual buildings down either.
He
But
does, though.
he does. But yeah, so I think kind of exploring those feelings right now, whether hot and heavy for both of us with natural disasters and weather and virtual disasters and dumb brains, might be a good
Mm-hmm.
thing to talk about.
Oh, okay. This is true. This is true. The thing is like these are hobbies, and all things come and go, and all passions come and go.
True.
I've experienced this over and over and over again throughout my various hobbies. ADHD brain means I adopt a lot of hobbies in
Mm.
very intensely, and then
Hmm.
immediately abandon them. Uh,
Facts. Very big
yeah.
facts there. Yeah.
So you learn to onboard and offboard fairly quickly. And you think you get better at it, but it's always an emotional roller coaster.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um,
Speaking of an emotional roller coaster, we did have one question from Troy about Pathfinder goblins.
mhm.
And I would recommend checking out Bite the Bullet if you want some really emotive,
Yeah,
crazy, cool goblins, especially if you want them to vibe like Pathfinder's goblins.
yeah.
I would
But the
point
Bullet's
you
got
towards
some
those.
great ones.
Really good ones.
There's a couple of others that do want. Also, they don't quite map to Pathfinder's artistic vibe, 1 to 1. But Twin Goddess has some amazing
Yes.
goblins, especially if you
Yes.
want some goblin girls that just are really rocking it.
And what I would say PC appropriate there too, because a lot of times like Bite the Bullets, I mean, there's still gonna be some ones you could use for PCs, don't get me wrong. But there's definitely
Hmm.
gonna be some you could use for like more baddies that have that more
Hmm.
sinister vibe. And this is a good example of getting distracted by hyperfixation because now we're thinking about goblins.
Hmm. And I'm going to search my mini factory for goblins because they actually put searching and filtering in libraries finally.
What? That shows
Hmm.
you how little I printed last week.
Hmm.
Although I have to give them props for their overall improvements to the library system in the last little while because early on we maybe poked a little fun or talked about some features we were still like, why isn't this here? Gift cards. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we still
Yeah.
I will say though their library improvements have been really fantastic quality of life upgrades.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm glad. The site's still slow, and I hope that things turn around for it. But it's still like there's a lot more to love about my mini factory than there is to hate about it.
Scott's here. Hi, Comet Lord. What's up?
Hello, Comet Lord. Comet Lord, do you make cool goblins?
Yeah,
Look,
do you have goblins?
Troy here is looking for cool freaking goblins. The problem with the 3D printing world is there's a whole lot of really cool goblins, but a lot of them like will lean into a few different aesthetics,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
um, which are the obviously the Games Workshop aesthetic of goblins, and there's
mm-hmm,
some really nice ones out there of that. Then there'll be like the World of Warcraft aesthetic for goblin, which is distinctly different.
mm-hmm.
Um, but neither of them are the Pathfinder goblins, which are completely different. And very few of them are cute goblins.
True. Very true. I
Hmm.
mean, unless you like creepy cute,
Hmm.
the Chaos Goblin fan club is growing by enormous numbers. And there are people who do like their goblins a little on the sketchy look side.
Hmm.
So that's for sure. Comet Lord says he's avoided goblins for years except for a pinup. And let's be honest, can anything compete with the Bathtub Lich pinup? No. No. Nothing will ever beat Scott's Bathtub Lich, in my opinion. Go look it up if you haven't heard about it. Anywho.
And I'm
You
looking through here. Cast and Play's got some good oh, check out Warp Miniatures goblins. They do
yeah.
not match the Pathfinder aesthetic at
Mhm.
all, but they're kind of glorious.
Yeah.
They look like Saturday morning cartoon goblins. They
Yeah.
look like a freaking Gummy Bear soundtrack needs to be playing in the background as they come out of the printer.
Yikes. I mean, good. Probably more your aesthetic than mine then.
Yeah.
Comet Lord's also reminding us that he has a Cthulhu monster Comet Lord pinup as well. That one squicks me out a little bit, bud. I'm gonna be honest. Just a little squig.
Oh, yeah.
All
I
right.
guess like the big difference is like how big is the goblin's nose? Because you're going to get huge ears the second you have goblin.
Yeah. I mean, unless you get the little like yellow like first ed D&D goblins, you know what I'm talking about. I want to
Mm-hmm.
say maybe Crippled God had some of those if you want them. It's kind of like you get your kobolds and your dragon and rat varieties. There's like a whole spectrum of dragon to rat kobold, right? And some
Mm-hmm.
weird spots in between. But yeah, the goblins, I would say to me, Bite the Bullet's probably my first, and then I do want to say Arson Guild had a pretty nice set as well
Mm-hmm.
that I liked, but it was a little more reined in from the
Mm-hmm. They're
uh
definitely leaning into the Warcraft goblins,
yeah,
Arson Guild
yeah,
does,
yeah.
but they lean into the Warcraft everything.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you can go to Titan Troll Miniatures.
Mm,
They've got some wonderful goblins out there with the very David Bowie vibe.
yeah, like Labyrinth,
Yeah, the Goblin King.
Dance Magic Dance.
Exactly.
People I know still traumatized by those pants. I still like the movie though. I would say back to the subject, or no? Are we goblined out? Nope.
I think we're done with goblins.
All right. But we're certainly not done talking about headspace, I think, as the first block to printing. And we've talked about in previous episodes the trial of organizational management of trying to get your assets under wraps that you don't just are overwhelmed by looking at. We've talked about the refinements there in the libraries. But we've also sort of scratched at burnout before. What other mental blocks have you had? Specifically,
I mean, a lot of it is like ADHD burnout type things
sure,
that aren't
sure.
not even burnout, but like when I'm overwhelmed doing other things, it's really easy for me to leave a print on the bed for way too long because
Mhm.
the mental inertia it's going to take for me to clean the space, get the print off, and then like it becomes the longer I wait, the bigger that initial hurdle becomes.
Yeah. I think
And
that's called persistent demand avoidance, I believe,
mhm, yeah.
where you have a thing and it's just that one little thing, but you're resisting that thing, and then it just
Mhm.
kind of becomes this increasingly manifested roadblock.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I call it the impossible tasks.
Hmm. Okay, I like
The
that too.
impossible tasks can't be done, no matter how much you want to do them.
Yeah, yeah, I
And
can see
forcing
that.
the impossible tasks to be done is a way to hurt yourself.
Hmm.
So that's not a good thing.
Interesting.
But anyway, this is getting into really weird territory for our show.
What is it? I think we secretly deal in hyperfixation a lot. Anyway.
yeah. Um, so mostly I've just been like the hobby is multifaceted. So when I can't deal with the printing aspect of the hobby, there are other aspects of the hobby that I happily jump into, like learning, getting a new airbrush to replace my poor ruined one that I broke
Hmm.
very
Hmm.
badly
Which you
by.
did do, right?
Yeah,
Have
yep,
you
I
had a
did
chance to try it
do.
out yet?
Yep, it works wonderful. It works very wonderful, and it works a lot more wonderful than this broken one.
Hmm.
So this is supposed to be a dual action airbrush, and it only has binary and then crush because
Okay.
I have done bad things to this airbrush in neglect.
Talking
Um,
cleaning neglect? Or are we talking? What are we talking about?
it's not so much cleaning neglect, but it is cleaning neglect. It was done with the best of intentions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there is a theory in airbrushing, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that the best way to preserve the quality of your airbrush is to store it wet.
I actually have been doing this. That's interesting.
Yes. And that works great if you use your airbrush regularly and you
Hmm.
can keep the wet fresh. But
I see where
let's
you're
say
going.
you go to Germany for some
And,
reason
and
and
leave it in the
life
wet,
changes in dramatic ways because things happened in Germany.
like COVID.
Well, not just COVID, but like business opportunities and growth and cool things and
Yeah, sure,
my
sure.
life needing to take an entire like what we're talking about, like I can't 3D print. It became I can't airbrush for a while. Like
Hmm.
like me, my active painting hobbying thing had to take a back seat to other aspects of the hobby. While I dealt with things like that I can't talk about because it's stuff related with OPR, but that
Right,
stuff
right.
related to things we announced, like partnerships with Tooth and Coats
Yeah,
paints
yeah,
and
yeah.
cool
Well, I mean,
things
good
like
stuff
that.
though.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
stuff.
Really
Good
cool
stuff.
stuff that took a
Right,
lot of time and effort and meetings and all
right,
that
right,
sort of
right,
stuff.
right.
So my little airbrush just sat in its wet
Hmm.
and
And
then the water evaporates.
hmm
And then the water evaporates again and again. And every so often I'll notice and I'll top her back up. And then all the crust in that
hmm
water over the time became a permanent crusty bond on this poor airbrush. And this would not have happened if I had never let it dry out. But now it's stuck in places I can't get to. And I'm sure that there is some amount of cleaning in the future that a much more skilled parent could disassemble this thing into its component parts and get some really good cleaning out there and get some really good brush and save this airbrush. But this current year Param is not of that skill set yet.
hmm hmm
And taking this thing apart frightens me.
Do you know what I use for my wet tank? Since we're
What?
talking about the subject,
Uh-huh.
I use an ultrasonic glass cleaner,
That's
which happens.
exactly what I'm using.
And so, did you just not agitate it at all? I guess you just left it entirely. Is that what happened? Okay.
Yeah.
Because my ultrasonic glass cleaner keeps that thing pretty clean.
It did for months and months and months of storing it wet. And when I used it on the regular, even if I was a month or two between uses on the airbrush, it was
Hmm.
fine. It's 6 months though. 6 months will do a thing to your airbrush.
Oh, that'll do a thing. Yeah. Okay. I didn't realize it was
Mhm.
quite that long.
Mhm. Anyway, so this poor thing, uh, I'll put it aside and hope to resuscitate it one day. So I thankfully right before the snow hit, before the blizzard, I need some Rankin Bass like accompany music to come in here. Um, I went and got a replacement airbrush, an Awada, and
Yeah.
so I'm going to hopefully treat this one better.
Well, the good news is if future Param gets the skills to clean it, you'll have a backup.
Mhm.
And the better news is you have something to use right now,
Yeah.
which is exactly where I'm at because I think I did a paint clog bad that
Oh dear.
I caused me as I was trying to clean it to bend the rod.
Hmm.
And as we all know, that is like
Yeah, you
nearly
got
a
to go
death
buy a new
sentence.
rod now.
Yeah. So,
And
anywho,
honestly, buying a new rod isn't that bad. Even expensive airbrush rods are still only like $10.
sure, sure. Except for it's an off-brand because, of course, I didn't. It's my first one. It was. I don't. I
Oh.
have no idea if they even sell that part individually because it's so cheap. So it's not for me. It's not anywhere near your Iwata story for sure.
Oh.
But
Hmm.
well, so that was another impossible task story.
Hmm.
And you've got your weather.
Hmm.
Uh, so you have kind of like two things compounding here. How are you dealing with the weather aspect and how it's impacting your stuff?
Well, the printer is unusable.
Well, right, right. So
Yeah.
you're doing what are you doing anything else to kind of manage that? I'm curious.
Oh yeah, no. I am getting the paintbrushes out, and obviously not the airbrush yet. And I'm painting the models. I'm making armies. We're playing games with those armies. We're building lists. We're enjoying all the other aspects of the hobby that take advantage of all the things that the printer has done for me up until it couldn't do them for me anymore.
I think that is beautiful. I think it's funny because as makers, you know,
Hmm.
you get into this hobby, you get in and you get obsessed with your capacity to create stuff.
Hmm.
And it's very easy to be like, I need this, I need this, I want this, I need this, I need this, I want this. And you're doing so much work creating, you're not actually enjoying, right? And I
That
think
can
that
happen.
that can lead very swiftly to burnout.
Hmm.
So I think that is amazing that you're actually taking that time to like kind of re attune yourself to the actual payoff, right? It's
Hmm.
very easy to get focused on refinement of process and focus on, generative work, production work, planning work, et cetera, trying to get everything, dialed in 100%, but
Hmm.
not actually taking the time to enjoy the thing, right?
Right.
And that is a swift road, in my opinion, to madness and a swift road to burning out, right?
Mhm. Yeah. You want to get like it's one thing to have a little green lump. It's another thing to have like a really cool painted model and that you really
It's really
like.
good. That is really good. Have I seen a close up of that before? I feel like I
I
maybe
don't
have.
know. I posted on Facebook when it got done, like I do all of them. This is
Yeah,
the Titan Forge High Elf Mage from their Heroes line, so like one of their D&D NPC line,
yeah, yeah.
and I liked it a lot, so I painted it up for
If
my
you're
model.
listening to this, a very kind of classic high elf vibe. She's got blonde hair, white cloak, ruby tip staff. Very has like a really good the aesthetic actually kind of reminds me of blood elves in a way
Yeah, it's
from
definitely
WoW.
got that blood elf look on the like with the shoulder pads and stuff.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
even did put like and the little garnets on the shoulders. I did do in red, so they look like very bloody.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
But I like where its vibe is sitting. It's very, very cool.
And it's like one of those situations where the high elves can totally double as vampire minis if you just paint them different.
Hmm. That it actually is facts. I actually had because one of my major armies that I've kind of had in the background, because obviously I have my chaos and stuff, but
Hmm.
I do a lot of skeletons, and you remember I've been doing that elemental undead army, right?
Hmm.
So it's like the ice skeletons, the fire skeletons, and they're
Hmm.
like kind of like the like it's just a little bit of a different vibe, and I mean
Do,
it's allowed me to pull in stuff from different minis and kind of fuse them into one thing. You have a
I'm
question?
curious how you did the different ones. So ice, did you do like the clear blue resins and like the coldy
I did
stuff?
use I did do some translucent. I actually
Hmm.
tended to have better luck with
Hmm.
multicolored zenithal,
Hmm.
where I did deep blue base,
Hmm.
sky blue midtone, and then some white dusting on them.
Hmm.
And I used a lot of I want to say it was Mini Monster Mayhem did an ice undead set where they were
Mm,
actually supposed to be servitors to one of the ice dragons, I think, but
okay.
they are just amazing looking. And they also had a second set of them that were crystal.
Oh.
So you could paint them either way. And
Hmm.
so it actually gave you a really broad range, and because of the similarities, you could also pull the ice skeletons back towards the crystal look as well, just because they have the projections of ice similar to the crystal ones. The crystal ones have more of a geometric.
Hmm.
They're like flat tipped vibes, so like they kind of look like there's a word for it.
Geodes.
Very geode vibe, but also it's like Helia something, Heliodor maybe. uh it has like a little like hexagonal or septagonal
Hmm.
crystal formation. It looks really, really neat, but still if you paint them up white and blue shaded and stuff, they look
Hmm.
like ice crystals very well as
Right.
well. And I actually swapped the dragons the same way.
Hmm. Cool. But how did you paint the heart elementals?
The heart elementals.
Yeah.
Oh, for Captain Planet joke. Got it. I actually do have heart elementals, believe it or not. But my heart elementals are elementals of passion who are warbringers, is what I called them.
Oh.
And so I actually used some poison monsters and some like because there was like a toxin monster, I think
Hmm.
it was called, and then they had some ectoplasmic spirit like things that I think were kind of intended to be like a proxy for maybe a night haunt army. But
Hmm.
I do actually have because I had a campaign where there were 7 spirits of rage that were like imprisoned, and
Hmm.
they were unleashed on the world and became the
Hmm.
source of like all this conflict. And
Hmm.
so it's actually really, really cool monster from Creature Catalog from Sword and Sorcery Games, which was a
Right.
subprint of White Wolf. But
Yeah.
painted all those up with translucence and red to make them look like kind of these clouds of anger and passion and rage. So they
I
were
have a,
hard elementals. They
I
were
have a question for
mean.
you. I have a
Yes.
question for you, Kristen.
Yes.
How in the heck, before you got the magic box, were you able to make these creative encounters in your games?
Lots and lots of pre-paint minis. Uh, Lots and
I
lots of
don't
model
I
kits.
don't have ice pre-paint models, and I have most of the line that's ever been made.
Uh, Not well would be the quickest answer to that question. But
Right.
I also backed a ton of Kickstarters, and I will tell you, nobody can shop a miniature market clearance sale like I can. I have a pile of gray shame in that closet like you would not believe that probably needs to go away. But um, because of that, I got to cherry pick a whole bunch of Kickstarter box sets for exactly the right minis. And some of those Kickstarter box sets were bought maybe like, I'll say dollar on the 10, dime on the dollar sort of situation at most. Sometimes much better deals than that. But yeah, you know what I like? Having all that time back and having all the uh, extraneous extra minis that I still really don't know what I'm going to do with half of them. I think I've just started giving some of them away because I'll do teach kids how to play D&D games sometimes
Right.
and just let them take the monsters home. I've
Mhm.
done that 3D printed too. With the blessing of the creator, very
Right.
clearly. I'm going to make that very clear. Never have I charged and or sold those things. It was totally like what's his name? Twin Goddess actually let me give away some of those minis that were painted up by the kids. So
Oh,
that was neat.
very cool. Mhm.
Uh, Thank you, Mr. Canish, for the compliment about my clearance game.
Yeah.
It's true though. But that is a valid solution, by the way. If you are in a situation, I'm going to go with challenge living space as
Mhm.
another change that might be happening to you.
Mhm.
I have a buddy who had a house fire.
Oh
Fortunately, was
no.
able to save his printers, and he was
Uh-huh.
actually in the process of setting up a print farm,
Uh-huh.
and had to move him with his mom, back in with his mom,
Uh-huh.
and had no place to set up the print shop and had no adequate ventilation, but still wanted to be involved in the hobby. And,
Mhm.
so very creative. And this person actually went through and did a whole bunch of different things, everything from using library printers to go and do the print work. So still did the file management, the purchasing, built the collection, still did those things, still got to be engaged in that active part of the hobby, but then could take the actual production to like, a maker space or a library. And I think that's a very valid way to do it, even if you normally have your own printer, right? Like with that way, you're going to network with your local 3D printing community. You're also going to learn new techniques by talking to those other people. You're going to see what they're making. And it can be
Mhm.
a really good way to engage during a time of crisis.
Mhm.
But there's also nothing wrong with taking a step back, going and buying some Nolzers, going and buying some clearance
Yeah.
minis. This hobby, yes, we've been liberated from the chains of those things, right? Like I
Mhm.
get to print my weird stuff and I get to kit bash it and I get to tweak it out
Mhm.
and do all this fun things, but I don't I didn't have to burn my old stuff, right? It's still there.
Right.
And by the same token, you could still get more if that was the solve while you are denied your gray goo of wonder.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, it's nothing wrong with getting old metal out and painting it
yeah,
up.
yeah.
Like old
Is
Sandra
that
Gary, they sculpted Reaper mini.
that's a Reaper?
Yeah.
Oh,
Old school, all metal, putty based Reaper mini from
Herberto,
1995.
I believe
Mhm.
I believe maybe we'll talk about some doing some promo stuff because I might have another painting class coming up. We'll
Mhm.
see if that happens. So
The one thing I don't miss about metal is how
chipping.
easy it chips.
Yeah, the chipping was
Mhm.
rough, rough, rough. In fact, that's one of the things I actually don't mind so much about
Mhm.
the older gen printers because sometimes your if you have a teeny tiny texture line situation and you smooth it out with primer,
Mhm.
you're actually going to get some really good adhesion. But
Yeah. Mhm.
trying to think, what other disruptions could there be? Well, obviously we've experienced supply chain disruptions.
Oh yeah, yeah,
That's a
yeah.
thing.
Or you break your printer and you got to wait for the either to get the new one to ship to you or to be able to afford to replace
Or
it.
6 months for replacement part to show up.
Yeah, yeah. There's I think focusing on what causes the outage might be a dangerous rabbit hole to jump down. Because there are
I
lots of
love
things
rabbit
that
holes.
because there's lots of reasons, both like mental, physical, and circumstantial, that can like 3D printing requires space and money and supplies and like and like I knew I had to take a break for a little bit during COVID, which because getting alcohol and gloves was a problem, and
Oddly enough.
so I had to very much ration my supply and choose my prints very carefully right at the height of my mania.
Yeah.
Um, and
It
then I
was the same for both of us,
overcompensated,
honestly. Yeah, yeah.
as soon as I had access. I ended up getting like a um, a shipping crate worth of gloves that it took me 3 years to completely chew through.
Shipping crate. Like when we say shipping crate, how big are we talking here?
I'm talking 4,000 gloves.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
Mhm,
a nice chunk of change. I think the boxes I
mhm.
use are about 500. I think I've gone through close to 4,000 in the last 3 years. I can see that. I can see that.
Mhm. Yeah, because it was the only way to get them at the time at a cost per glove that was not stupid.
Yeah.
I was just like, hey, well, I just commit to okay, these are not medical grade. These are not, so I'm not going to be taking these out of the supply chain of people who need them.
Right, right.
And then uh, I think it was like like it's the versions for like people who work on cars was the grade I was getting
Hmm.
because they all had like people like holding wrenches and axles and stuff on the front of it. It's like very manly things that have nothing to do with me.
It
Um,
made you feel really good though when you were getting ready to print a cute little dinosaur with a love story.
yes.
I guess he was more of a lizard guy. I don't know, but I did love that. Anyway,
Hmm?
your recent creature, if you
Oh,
yeah,
Taki. Everybody's
yes,
loving Taki.
yes, yes.
Mhm.
So uh, you can put on your big mechanics grade gloves to print your cute romantic lizard.
I like little lizard. He cute.
Very, very cute.
Mhm.
All right. Well, so if we're not going to focus on specifics of complication, specifics of solution, we've talked about a lot of remapping, allocating your resources. Do you have anything else that jumps out at you as maybe something someone could do while they were doing that? I
I
do.
mean, there's always like just focus on different aspects of your hobby, which we talked about. It's like, if you don't want to deal with the printing, you can deal with the painting. And then honestly, like if you just completely burned out on everything related to it, which is very much like you could just be burned out on like miniature gaming, or
Hmm.
there's a circumstance that you are not able to miniature game, so the motivation to get the printer going slows down too. Then you
Yes,
could
very
just
much
like
so.
pick up a different hobby and or a different it's time like all it's like we go back to basic burnout advice. It's like breaks are healthy. Go
Mhm.
do something completely different. Go play Final Fantasy 14. Go burn your house down in Power World. Go I mean, go
Yeah,
do something else. Like get really into anime. Like and then when you come back, I would recommend like go do something that and get really into something else because you'll be surprised when you come back to your hobby what knowledge you've gained that will
true.
apply to your new hobby. Like when like I'm really into anime, so the concept of now there are really cool figures for anime characters that I like that I can 3D print myself and not have to pay $500 for, which is the
Hmm.
going rate for some of these things.
Hmm.
Um, and then when I get my airbrush out, I will be very happy to be very skilled at airbrushing because that's the best way to paint these things.
And to save
Or
some change, chunk of change doing it.
when me and Crystal went down the gunpla rabbit hole together and building cool robot model kits and then like learning about all this really cool stuff in that hobby that is not analogous to like is applicable to our hobby, but
Mhm.
they have completely different culture. So like the tools they use are specialized for their needs and there's techniques they use that I didn't know about till I got into them that are very applicable to miniature painting and stuff so that by jumping down Gundam rabbit hole, I was able to come back to the hobby with all sorts of new skills and knowledge that were
Mhm.
not commonly taught outside of that circle.
Right. Right.
Mhm,
Makes sense.
mhm.
Yeah, we have a couple things in comments down in there. Troy says during Burnout, switched to Pathfinder instead of tabletop minis. I think that's a really great way to switch it up. To
Sure.
switch from an war game to an RPG is a good one. But then
And
Lava
vice
being
versa.
yeah, sure. You got a lot of shield frequencies we could rotate here, right? You could go from a character-based thing to a vehicle-based thing. You could go. There's so many ways you could take it.
Start
Even
printing cheese tokens for your board game with
cheese
rats.
cheese tokens for sure. Accessories for your other games like Magic, but we've done that before.
Hmm.
But Lava Being's question, I think, is a really cool one.
Hmm.
Any resources for taking your STLs and painting them digitally when you can't do so physically? I know people that
I
do this to plan their whole paint job out.
I know there are resources out there. I do not know what they are. I do not know what they are. I can do it inside Blender, but that might be a bit extreme.
Sure, sure. I wonder if Scott's still here. If Scott, if you're still in chat and want to talk about any resources you would recommend, if not, I have definitely heard that. I've seen people use Photoshop and just take like a angle on screenshots from profiles and
Hmm.
silhouettes and do that and just do like a color map. I've seen people
Uh-huh.
do that for their printing, but
Oh, I thought he meant like actually embedding color codes into the digital file so
well,
that
I
they can be
mean
like
that you
printed
could
in
do that.
color.
You could do that, right? And then you could also
Mhm.
take advantage of some of the coding for the textures. That would be really cool to see.
Do you know
But
something that's really cool that you can do that if you like Tabletop Simulator?
what's that?
You can actually like do the printing and painting the mini and then digitally scan it using the mini iPhone apps or phone apps that will scan a mini.
Yeah.
Now, this is not good for reproducing anything that's going to be print worthy, but
Right.
it is
Right.
really cool for making like I could scan this paint job and then
Hmm.
plug it in the Tabletop Simulator and play with my hand painted mini in a
Right.
digital game of D&D.
Right. I think that's cool. I know people that do use Hero Forge actually to color
Mhm,
up that mock up, and
mhm.
then actual screenshot their mini from Hero Forge and use it as their token in D&D. I see that all the time.
Yeah.
Um, Mr. Canish says there is no Scott here, only Zool. But then Scott speaks up and says, no, painting over renders in Photoshop is exactly what they do
Yeah.
for their paint job plans.
Yeah. So I'm afraid
Um,
I don't have many options for you myself, Lava Being, other than the thing. Oh, Polypaint in ZBrush from Comet Lord.
yeah,
That's a
yeah.
thing. I do texture work in Blender, which is like how they do the painted textures for 3D models in video games.
Hmm.
But I don't know. That's an option. It's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, for sure. Back to the more general view, one of the things I would also recommend, and something I'm in the process of doing, is re-examine if you're losing your physical space or you're changing your physical space for your whatever your obstacle is, to actually look at the organizational situation in your physical space and maybe work on improving process and efficiency. In that space, improving safety, improving ventilation, improving kind of rethinking what you're doing in the first place. Because I think sometimes when you've hit that wall, it's a good time to go back even further and go, okay, is there a root cause here? Like, one of the things that I constantly do is my wash and cure situation is just such a debacle. Like,
Hmm.
and since it's a messy, gross part, we're talking about that demand avoidance situation. And when you get to that point where you really want to clean up your print job and get it cured and get it done, every little bit of objection you have to properly and safely handling it and or cleaning it up can create inefficiencies in your process, right? And like one of the things, a piece of advice in general that I was given recently is just have more garbage cans, which is ridiculous, but at the same time, is it like having a garbage can in a place to actually take care of waste appropriately and quickly is so helpful. And it's weird because our society kind of encourages very specific places for garbages or whatever. But like if you're in a makerspace, having waste bins and hazardous material bins, maybe depending on what you're working with, depending on the filament or resin you're using, isn't a bad idea, right? Like having it
Hmm.
just good to go and having it ready to go and really thinking through your space.
Hmm.
Um, you know, maybe it's a good time to ground zero if you're in that kind of holding pattern anyway, for whatever the reason.
Okay.
Maybe it's time to go back and dig even deeper and look at it entirely.
Yeah. And if you're going to do that, one of my favorite methods that I've found really cathartic is from Evan and Caitlin, the YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
They have a method for when they do this. They call it the Pood method.
The what?
Pood.
Food.
Pood.
Huh.
You purge, organize, optimize, and dispose.
Huh.
So
Food.
the basic method is when you're ready. So instead of like working in your space and cleaning the corner and then shifting the stuff out of the way to clean the next corner, which is
Mm-hmm.
normal cleaning method,
Sure.
you purge the environment. You remove everything from that space, and while it's outside of that space, you organize it
Hmm.
into so that you've like what you've took out of that space now is now cataloged and organized. You optimize what you need for the new space and dispose of the things you no longer need in that space.
Interesting.
Hmm.
I had not heard that. I kind of like it.
Hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, it's like it's all the benefit. Like, have you ever noticed like you're never more organized than like slightly after a move?
Yes. Oh God.
Hmm.
That is a satisfying moment when you
Hmm.
completely start over and like you have that moment like I'm gonna keep it up this time. And then life happens. And you have to go back and zero it out. I think maybe a
Hmm.
little more planning for me at least would be a really good idea during that initial period. Because it is pleasant to have that kind of
Hmm.
the clean lines and clean
Yeah.
surfaces, which is what a lot of people really benefit from.
And the Pood method is a way of doing that without actually moving. But all you
Hmm.
have to do is empty the room you are reorganizing.
Hmm.
So this works better not in the middle of snowstorms, because one of the best ways to do it is a nice sunny weekend and spread some tarps outside,
And just take
and
everything
then
outside.
like set up a bunch of boxes to organize in, and then
Hmm.
take everything outside, organize it outside, bring the stuff back inside.
Hmm.
Also, it puts you on a very input like it will prevent ADHD brain from ruining this process, because there is very real time limit and very real consequences of leaving your things outside overnight in next to the sidewalk.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, having had the experience of having my entire, multi-thousand-dollar print run of my campaign setting book show up and being dropped in the middle of the street during a rainstorm, I
Uh-huh.
understand this sense of urgency, but it
Hmm.
isn't always fun when you get those time crunches. So I would
I
still
never
say,
said
hey,
fun.
well, yes, I would still say pay close attention when you're in your planning phase.
Mhm.
Make sure that your weather's probably okay, but you're not going to want to even leave stuff out in the sun for more than a day or two if you had to.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. And I'll also say, lean into the dispose aspect. We're 3D printing here. None of this stuff is actually of value unless it has paint on it.
that's true. That's true. This is a lesson I am struggling to learn, but it's starting to sink in. It's only taken what 2.5 years of
Hmm.
being excited about the hobby.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, Kristen.
Oh yeah. Don't throw something on the floor. Don't do it. Don't. If you're listening, he literally
That's a
just dropped a mini and crushed it on the floor in front of me. I think this is like some sort of shock aversion therapy or shock acceptance therapy that he's
look,
conducting.
look. This is an elf. I don't have to paint now.
That's the solve. Just destroy the work. I mean, it's an option, I guess, if you want to go scorched earth on
And if I
things.
decide I want it, it can be on the next build plate tomorrow.
Sure, that's fair. That's fair.
Mhm. Sorry about that. I just
We need more battle casualty mini. I mean, okay, so one of the games at Gen Con that was very appealing to me was it Monster Apocalypse? Monster
Mhm.
with the Play-Doh? Do you know what I'm talking about? Monster.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh, I love that game.
So this game, you make your minis are molds you slap it Play-Doh into, and you just make these Play-Doh monsters, and then you stab their weapons in
Necromolds.
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 That's what it was.
Yeah.
And there's like some anyway. Your monsters then fight, and when you defeat them, you actually get to smash their little putty guy into oblivion. And man, watching those games, I have rarely seen people with smiles that big on their face when they're just grinding these little squishy guys.
Yes.
But be careful because the swords and the shields that you stick into the putty are still plastic and you could hurt your hand.
Yeah.
But yes,
Remove
very,
the
very
swords
satisfying.
first. They kind of that's one of the reasons they give you a little ring to do the crushing with.
But yeah, Necromolds was really cool. And maybe something that might be a good catharsis if you need this kind of structure. Or you can be like Param and just take your old, less high grade minis. I actually think of a box I could probably do this too. Maybe it would be cathartic to just take a hammer to them and crush them all up.
Resin shatters
Mm-hmm.
and shards are bad for eyeballs. So if you do decide you want to hammer crush your miniatures in a fit of catharsis of turning your pile of shame into your powder of shame, wear safety glasses.
Wear safety glasses for sure, and then go nuts. Just smash them. I would also recommend taking a large surface and either rolling out like some painter's plastic or maybe some cardboard so you can just fold it all up. Are there any types of printed minis safer when smashing? I'm not going to offer safety advice in any official capacity on this one.
Yeah, maybe the chocolate ones.
The chocolate ones. Oh, yes. We were just talking about chocolate printers today, I think, or yesterday. Today. I was talking to somebody just recently about chocolate.
Yeah, I think Kane messaged me about it. Like he was like, "Oh, is this a chocolate printer? I need it," and I'm like, "I want it too."
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, we're coming up on time, but we've got a little bit of news. So finally, Christmas holiday's over, and they're not just putting printers on sale; they're making printers for sale.
New stuff.
New printers. The Anycubic has announced the Photon Mono M5S Pro, their 14K printer, which again, 10.1 inch screen, 14K HD. It's 25.8 macrons on the x-axis and 14 macrons on the y-axis. So like it's got those weird rectangular pixels.
I hate it. Okay, go on.
But both of them are still under 35 macrons. So,
but those are little. Hey, that's Ace says, hey, that's my printer.
And they've got it on pre-order right now. Like this is an upgrade to the M5S. One of the new features of it is that they have a heating / purification module. That's what kind of brought this to my attention. So if I had this, I could print right now, and I wouldn't be talking about I can't print right now because weather got cold. Usually cold weather doesn't shut me down, but it does shut me down when it reaches 0.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even have problems. I think I was printing my first year in my garage until I want to say about like low 20s outside because it made my garage dip below 50. Right. And it started getting a little bit of fail.
You kind of want to print at 70 Fahrenheit, and I don't know what this is in proper temperature.
Right. But I did run the risk and have a good run of, I'd still say maybe 10 degrees lower than that, that it was still pretty comfortable feeling. But once I started getting close to 50, I started getting some really weird layer fails and things.
Yeah. I mean, it's got some cool things. It's got the layer. It's got the auto leveling bed, though this version of it does ship with an adjustable layering bed. It has that sensor that determines like when it knows when the thing has released from the bottom, so it will detect print failures. It'll even tell you if you have enough resin in the vat to complete the print job that you told it to print, because it has like a weight sensor, and it knows how much resin weighs.
Neat. I like that. We were just talking about this last time we ran that.
Yeah. So it's just a giant quality of life upgrade to your standard high-end, high-res 10-inch printer.
Ace Kipton does confirm the auto leveling is amazing and awesome.
Yep. And it's all this at an early bird price of $460 USD, which is only
Suspiciously,
$10 more than the Saturn III Ultra.
suspiciously the same price point I think that I bought my first one from them.
Yep. Um, it looks like a cool printer with cool stats and cool quality. The initial reviews of people who have gotten early access to this printer, it's coming up good. And with all these cool extra quality of life features, I hope those quality of life features make their way into other printers. And this is not a bad printer if you wanted to start and you wanted to get an Anycubic printer. It's not like a G formation printer with like or an Ultimaker printer or some of those like really high end printers where like they feed the resin in through a cartridge system and all that jazz.
Right, right.
But like for a standard, you know, entry level mid range printer, really nice stats on this one. So
Nice.
and also I really want that in. I really want a heater now, especially since I finally got shut down because of heating.
Hmm. I mean, that's a good motive, right? If it's not going to work, it's not going to work.
And then a little bit of news that's a little bit more on the controversial side of things
Mm-hmm.
is we've talked about MNG on the show before as a miniature creator that makes free models out there. They have a Patreon, but like their models are free,
Mm-hmm.
and they are suspiciously alike other miniatures to an uncanny degree.
Other hammers of war, you might say.
Yeah, with very fun names that I was always got a chuckle about.
Yes,
I brought up the disorganized snuffleupagus before as one of my favorite alternative names for a model that doesn't tread on trademarks.
right, right. I do believe the hive aliens had some like scary chitin monster sort of names that were pretty generic but somewhat entertaining as well.
Well, he has announced that due to litigation from somebody, um, do they actually say? Yeah, no. Due to litigation with Games Workshop filed in September, they are going to be shutting their entire operation down and likely declaring bankruptcy.
Hmm.
I am not. I am not surprised that they got shut down
Mm-hmm.
because reasons, and I'm not a lawyer and IP specialist. More importantly, I'm not your lawyer or IP specialist.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
All of that.
though this does seem to be a an order of magnitude greater in that it involves like actual damages instead of just cease and desists,
Right, right.
um, which is a escalation in that we have not seen yet in the 3D printing space. Usually when GW comes in knocking for a creator, it's with a cease and desist letter, and then they disappear because who wants to go to war with GW? We
Right, right.
do not know the details of this case. We do not know what happened or what decisions they may or may not have made. Um, we do know that uh, there's a history of if somebody's. I don't know. I don't want to know what to say here, but um, lawyers were involved this time.
The lawyers were involved.
Choices were made,
Yep, yep.
and damages were taken into account. So it's definitely an escalation that we haven't seen yet in the 3D printing space. I
Mm-hmm.
do not know if this means more to come. We've definitely seen an escalation of takedowns lately from GW, from Disney, from other people in the space. This has been a bit of a wild west,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's kind of hard to know where the lines are. We do have some case law that defines what some of those lines are, like the chapter house decision.
Mm-hmm.
So some of those lines are pretty clearly drawn,
Mm-hmm.
but this is still an emerging market with a lot of very enthusiastic creators who may or may not have uh, intellectual property expertise backgrounds.
Right, right.
Mhm.
That tracks.
Yeah. So I know that EMNG was well loved in the community. their models were commonly recommended to just about anybody. And it's easy to see why, because the models were very high quality
Mhm.
compared to what was available, especially when we were first getting started in the hobby.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I am glad that I downloaded several of them, honestly,
Mhm.
because I will miss that creator in space. But I also understand why all this is happening. So
Yeah. 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 I am definitely. I think that as the space evolves, we're going to get more and more clear on what is permissive in this space and
hmm
what is profitable in this space. We've already seen kind of like the gold rush has started to fade.
hmm
We're seeing consolidation into more and more artists working for groups and companies, as opposed to
hmm
in and less lone wolf artists out there. We're seeing beloved artists that have done a solid effort at it,
hmm
retiring from the space for various reasons.
hmm
Um, and I hope that, like any market, once it reaches maturity, I hope that it's still a vibrant place filled with lots of options. But I think that the initial crazy time is over. I think the initial crazy burst and land rush is done, and now we are going to see the market do like the web did, like all digital spaces, like the streaming and YouTube and every other platform. We are going to see this space normalize.
hmm
Mhm,
I think that's fair. That's fair.
yeah.
I think it'll be an interesting couple years. I hope. I hope a lot of our favorites make it through.
hmm Yeah, me too. I think I think the big companies are probably going to stay, because
Sure.
the biggest of the bigs, they have first mover advantage.
hmm
I
Some
think
of
it's
them
going to be
have some.
harder to break in.
Some of them have some pretty savvy operational folks too. That's what I've heard.
And I imagine that it's going to be harder and harder for new creators. I think it's going to be harder and harder for new creators to break into the space.
Sure,
Um,
that's probably
and but
unfortunately true.
Yeah,
Still possible, I bet.
especially if possible. I think it's going to be more important than ever to have something that distinguishes you and your art from everybody else's art.
hmm
Things that things like Twin Goddess does, things
hmm
like Comet Lord's art
Comet
is
Lord does,
very,
yeah.
very different. Yeah,
Distinctive, yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Tyrant Troll has a very distinctive look. Like lots and lots of Cobra Mode, good lord,
Mm,
their art is so much unlike anybody
yeah,
else's.
yeah.
Um,
Which reminds me, I still need to get a hold of Andrea. Hmm.
yeah,
Remind me about that.
a neat, like finding your niche is important in a contracting market.
Yep. Very,
Yeah.
very true. Well,
Mm.
that was a lot.
Yeah. If you want to find any of the awesome creators that we've interviewed, you can do so over at printyourgames.com, where you'll find all the episodes of the show and links to the socials and all the things. And if you want to help the show, the best thing you can do is give us a rating on iTunes or Spotify. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
I'm Kristen Sowers, also known as Seventh Mastery, and don't forget your screen protector.